Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time we're talking episodes 4 and 5 of The Legend of Korra, called, respectively, In Harm's Way and The Metal Clan. And since we're doing a twofer, of course, we've got a lot to talk about. So let's just start off with what happens in episode 4. And this is all about our bad guys breaking out the final member of their little band, their little band of the Masters of Evil, or whatever they're called. Uh, and her name is Peely or something like that, and she's of course Zahir's former girlfriend. And I gotta say that all the bad guys we've seen so far have been really impressive folks, and Pili is no exception to this. As one of the first things she does is shoot down Zuko's dragon. And during all of this, just for fun, I'm going to keep calling them the Masters of Evil. Managed to defeat not only Tonraq but Zuko himself. Now, granted, Zuko's no spring chicken anymore, but he's probably still the most powerful firebender in the world. And he loses this fight. And, a dragon gets knocked stupid by one person in one shot. So, yeah, these guys are serious business. And it's very interesting to find out that when it was discovered that Korra was the Avatar, and she was still little more than a toddler, that these four had plotted to kidnap her, and that was basically what got them locked up, apparently, and why Korra was raised in that White Lotus compound down at the South Pole. She was essentially raised, unbeknownst to her, in order to prevent people who wanted to kidnap her for reasons unknown. Now you got to imagine, though, that somebody with kidnapping the young Avatar and raising them in any sort of philosophy, well, that's going to be a pretty powerful weapon. Now, of course, we've seen that Korra was raised by her parents were obviously a strong influence in her life, and she had Katara and the other people from the White Lotus around. So even though they were fairly strict with her, she was raised by good people who really wanted what was best for her and best for the world. Who knows what exactly Zahir and his crew had in mind. But I have a feeling that when we find out, it's not going to be just flat out straight up villainy, because even Amon did sort of have a point that there was enormous inequality in Republic City between benders and non-benders. So, there's that to consider. And I do like that they are sort of really starting to flesh out that the Masters of Evil here. Obviously Zahir and Pili are former lovers. Just the scene with the earthbending guy, whose name escapes me at the moment, just sort of going like, "Do you guys really have to make out right now?" That was pretty hilarious. And the waterbending lady, whose name I don't think I can pronounce properly, her just apparently just showing off when escaping by climbing up the side of the cliff when she could have just taken the elevator. It really is very. I do like the fact that the show respects its antagonists enough to sort of show that they are well-rounded people with senses of humor and flaws and good points as well. I mean, Azula was sort of crazy and evil, but in her own way, she genuinely did care about Ty Lee and May. She desperately wanted her mother and her parents' approval. And it's very easy to draw villains who are just villains for the sake of being evil, but villains who are more fleshed out as real people naturally are stronger and more interesting characters. And that's always really been one of the real points in the favor of the Avatar series, is that they really go out of their way to make sure that everybody is a well-rounded and interesting character. Well, for the most part, we haven't really seen too awful much of terms of well-rounding for the Earth Queen, who just is a nasty and horrible person. beyond the fact that she does have a legitimate gripe that about the land that Republic City is built on having been land that was seized by force from the Earth Kingdom. Now, one thing I also liked about the first episode here is that they weren't holding the captive airbenders captive in Lake Laogai. Online, everybody's going like, "Oh man, they're holding them in Lake Laogai. It's so obvious." Like, well, if you stop and think about it, that's actually a very stupid place for them to put them, because obviously after the events that happened there back in Aang's day, they would have shared that story about what happened at Lake Laogai with a lot of people. I mean, even Mako sort of acknowledges that, yeah, it's well known that the Dai Li used to have a secret base there. I mean, it's really the first place that anybody is going to go and check. So, of course, the Dai Li, not being stupid, don't put them there. Now, I did like that Janora's astral projection powers came back. From what I've been hearing online, apparently that's the sub-school of air bending, not energy bending. That would appear to be something that's exclusive to the Avatar. So that's definitely interesting. And of course, we get to see more of Janora having a thing for Kai. And we sort of were told that the shipping thing was going to get toned down this season, and it appears that they are doing that, but that they aren't completely abandoning the idea of characters having romantic interests in people. I mean, we've got two villains who are in a relationship. Janora seems to have obviously has a thing for Kai, and given his reaction when she gave him a kiss on the cheek, he's apparently not completely averse to the idea either. And then, of course, next episode we see Bolin striking up a relationship with Opal. And I'm okay with this. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of romantic relationships. It's just you can just have a straightforward relationship and that be okay. It doesn't always have to be the back and forth tug of war, will they or won't they, that is so much a part of normal shipping. But anyway, getting back to things. You have to really wonder just how serious a grip on reality the Earth Queen has if she thinks that the Dai Li are going to be a match for the Avatar, an airbending master, a pretty powerful firebender. Okay, granted the Dai Li are probably more powerful than Bolin. I mean, he's good, but he's probably not up to their standards. But also this sort of small mini army of very, very pissed off airbenders. I mean, the Dai Li are good, but they're not that good. Although I did like that they brought back that cool little handcuff trick that the Dai Li used. That was nice. But of course, one of the big problems with the Dai Li is they like to jump around a lot, and they're very good at it, but jumping around in the air when fighting airbenders is monumentally stupid. I mean, it's the whole thing with earthbenders is that they're at their most powerful when they're touching the ground. If they don't have a connection to the ground, it seriously limits what they can do. So you gotta wonder if the Dai Li weren't just sort of showing off there, or just being dumb in general. But anyway, so Tenzin kind of gets his wish. He gets all these airbenders who are going to go to the Northern Air Temple and train in the ways of the airbenders. Now, maybe not necessarily full-on become air nomads, but you have to figure that there's going to be a certain number of people who are like, okay, I'm down with this whole lifestyle. And then there are probably going to be some others who are like, look, thanks for teaching me how to control things and how to take care of myself, but I kind of want to go back to my life. And I do like that this time around they offer them the choice. Like, okay, you can come to the Northern Air Temple with us, or we can take you somewhere where you'll be safe, presumably under the protection of the White Lotus. So, Tenzin has Tenzin and the Avatar crew have obviously learned how to pitch this a little bit better. And again, being taken prisoner by the Dai Li is an awful strong motivation to learn how to airbend, but not under the control of people who just want to exploit you. And also, I do like the fact that Bumi points out that the law in the Earth Kingdom does say that the Opal had the right to do this, but she's going to have a very hard time making a case for this to the public. So, good for Team Avatar for taking the proper moral stance. It's always a question, of course, of doing what's legal and doing what's right. Anyway, moving on to the second episode. This is the one that really focuses in on Lynn and what's going on with her. We learn an awful lot about what happened to Toph in the intervening years. She had apparently 2 husbands at some point. So Sue is Lynn's half-sister. We don't really get any indication as to who either of their fathers are. But I have to wonder if it might not be telling that they did mention Chief Sokka. And now keep in mind, Sokka is the one person who we do know from the original Avatar crew is dead. Now, it was heavily implied, especially when the show was about to start, that Toph was supposed to be dead as well. Here, they just basically say that she left to kind of go and wander the Earth. So that basically tells me that Toph is going to turn up some point in the future. So we know Zuko's around, we know Toph's still around, and of course we know that Katara is still around. So respectively, we've got the world's most powerful water... Well, it's pretty safe to say Katara is the best waterbender in the world. And, you know, given everything that she did, unquestionably Toph is the most powerful earthbender, Zuko the most powerful firebender, and Tenzin the most powerful airbender. I mean, imagine how awesome it would be if it's these 4 versus the Masters of Evil at some point. And just imagine what Tenzin would be like, you know, kind of riding into battle with his, you know, his aunt and his father's old crew. I mean, wow. Could anything possibly make Aang any more proud? I can't really think of much. But, you know, who knows if we'll get to see that. I certainly hope we do. But anyway, this time around, let's kind of just focus actually really briefly on what happens over on Airbender Island. We see that Ikki and Milu are making progress in their own little way with the newbie airbenders. And of course we see that Zahir is taken to airbending like a fish to water. Now I do like that we find out that he has studied airbenders extensively. This is, I think, goes a long way to explaining how it is that he's able to airbend so well, even though he hasn't had this ability longer than anybody else. I think we're meant to understand that because he understands the ways of the airbenders, how they think, how they move, that it was a lot easier for him to slip into being an airbender than it would be for some, you know, Joe Blow off the street. Now, granted, if you were to say have read a lot about martial arts and studied martial arts extensively, if you take up a martial art, it's still, you know, you're still learning how to do punches and kicks and whatever's involved from square one. But one also has to keep in mind that a lot of bending is the spiritual aspect of it, the mindset. And that is something that, going into things, Zahir had very, very strongly in his favor. And just look at how long it took Korra to develop the proper mindset in order to allow herself to airbend. You know, she was mentally and spiritually unprepared for that, while Zahir was mentally and spiritually prepared for that. So it really is not that crazy in my mind that he's as good as he is. Now we also get to see him take on Kaya, and we get to see that, wow, Kaya is really, really good. I mean, granted, she's the daughter of the Avatar and probably the most skilled waterbender in the entire world. If there's a case for anybody being number 2 in the world at waterbending, Kaya's pretty much got a very solid chance of having that spot. And she's not able to take Zahir down. And, you know, that really says something. But again, Zahir, well, there's no reason to think that he's limited his study to just airbending. He's probably studied the ways of all the benders very extensively. And there are some mitigating circumstances, but still, actually beating Kaya in a fight shows that Zahir is seriously, seriously somebody to not be underestimated. But anyway, getting back to what's going on over in the Metal Benders city, which I think is called Zhao Fu. I assume that's something meaningful in Chinese relating to metal. So we see that we get some real details about how Sue and Lin were raised. Toph was a very busy person who kind of let her kids roam free because she grew up very much the opposite, very restricted. And of course this led to Sue and Lin kind of fighting for her attention and love, and it never really worked out well for either of them because Toph in some ways saw them both as being disappointments. And it's interesting that they took the opposite path. They both, two sisters, got the same results even though they took the opposite paths. Sue was very much basically as far from being like Toph as she could possibly be, and Lin tried everything she could to be as much like Toph as possible. So you kind of have to wonder, well, just what did Toph want from her kids anyway? But I have the feeling we'll be seeing older Toph at some point during this season, and that should make for some really interesting stuff. And it really goes to show you just the depth of how much this must have hurt Lin growing up, given how much she just completely pushes away all of Sue's efforts to reconcile with her. Opal, this niece that she's never really known, comes and wholeheartedly says, like, hey, I want to get to know you. I know you have conflicts with your mom, but I'm really interested in getting to know who you are. And of course, Lin just completely and utterly shuts her down. And this gets her a very harsh chewing out from Korra. Not undeserved, but just look at the way that Lin actually ends up crying at the end. And stop and think about what Korra had said about how she's just sort of a bitter person who's gonna you're a bitter person who's gonna die alone. And then stop and think back about how Lin really went ballistic when Tenzin broke it off with her to be with Pima. That was probably a moment in Lin's life where she realized she was probably never going to have a family of her own, never going to have a husband of her own, never going to have children of her own. And then here she comes and sees that Sue, in a lot of ways, has everything that she probably wanted for herself. She's got a husband she cares about. She's got 5 kids who have apparently done all right for themselves. One of them's got a little bit of a weird attitude, but there's that. Her sister is an extremely accomplished person. She lives in this city that's all really dedicated to Toph's idea of people achieving their maximum potential. It's a city that's all about freedom and meritocracy, as somebody on TV Tropes very aptly put it. And while Lin has certainly done her share of good, she's taken down a lot of bad guys, she's kept law and order in Republic City, at the end of the day, Lin goes home to an empty apartment. So you can't help but think that she's looking at all this and just wondering that if she chose the right path in life, if all her choices from the time she was a kid were the wrong choices. Because probably from her perspective, despite neither of them exactly being the apple of mom's eye, Sue leads a much happier and far richer life than Lin does. Sue in a lot of ways leads the life that Lin probably wanted for herself. She may have accepted at some point in her life that she was never going to have that relationship with her mother that she wanted, but that she could have a family of her own. And then the whole stuff with Tenzin and Pima happens, and it's gone. And all that Lin is left with is her work. And after a lot of years of that sort of situation, is it really so surprising that the idea of trying to change things, to reconnect, to embrace this person who really does have everything that you want and that life has denied you? Well, is it really so surprising that maybe Lin just can't bring herself to face the pain of doing that? I'm not saying this justifies her behavior. I'm just saying this is a possible explanation that I put out there for your consideration. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time. Oh yeah, I forgot to talk about Bolin and Opal. Not a whole lot to say about this, but it is very cute. I mean, they did only have the one episode to really play around with this, but again, it's cute, and I do like this. It feels very genuine. The only really thing that sort of reads to me as being off about Opal is that Sue doesn't like the Earth Queen, who remember is named Opal, but apparently gave her daughter the same name. People tend not to give their children the same names as politicians that they really don't like. I mean, I assume that Opal could just simply be a very popular girl's name in the Earth Kingdom, and Sue just says like, "Well, I don't like Queen Opal, but I like the name Opal, so I'm gonna go with it." But yeah, it just sort of struck me as being kind of weird. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for you this time around. Until next time, take care and have a good one. And oh yeah, I'm gonna try and do live tweets of Korra from now on. I'm actually not going to be able to do it next week. When the episode airs, I will probably be on a train coming home from some business I have in Chicago that day. But for the rest of this season, if at all possible, I will be live tweeting Legend of Korra. So you can join me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi altogether if you want to be a part of that. It's been quite a lot of fun. So with that, take care and have a good one.